Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Wareham Whiparound here, the official podcast of the Cape Cod Baseball League's Wareham Gatemen. Ethan Eibe here, one of the broadcasters for the Gatemen this summer, joined as always by Kyle Marchak and an incredible guest for us today on the pod. In the words of the great Jason Stark, writer, broadcaster, and distinguished former major leaguer Doug Glanville. Doug, it is terrific to have you on today.
Well, it's great to be here. Kind of a homecoming. So I appreciate it. Many good years, many good days. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Of course, and the resume speaks for itself. Nine Major League Baseball seasons with the Cubs, Phillies, and Rangers. You started in the Cape Cod League with the Wareham Gatemen in 1990, but so much more beyond the diamond, an educator, an entrepreneur, and a true ambassador for the game of baseball. So it really is our honor to have you on today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And it's amazing. You think back, we're talking what, 30 something years, 35 years. It's a long time, but so much has happened. But the experience stays with me, and I'm still in touch with the host family I stayed with. So there's just this all enduring connection to Wareham and that experience in the Cape.
That's
So why
really
not start with that, right? The host family, I think that's a big part of the culture for the Gatemen. At least
Yeah.
it's what Ethan and I have gotten. We're blessed to be with a host family as well. And I think that's a relationship that you really can't replicate in any other forum, right?
It's special. I mean, it's funny, like in the minor leagues, maybe when I was in the Carolina League, they had boosters. You started to see that more, and it sort of disappears as you go higher up. Maybe the guys are more independent, they have more money, whatever it is. But I remember the tone being set in Wareham. The big thing was like, okay, you get your host family, and mine is the Donahues, and they live. It was awesome. They lived like right at the top of the hill by Spillane Field. So I just would roll out of bed, walk, and I had a job at town hall. I was the geek out guy. Like I want like a economic development job. so I'd walk to town hall, and then I could just walk to the field. It was amazing. I could go home, come back, and so I think that tone was really set when I first arrived, and the young daughter who was then 6, who's now, I probably shouldn't tell her age, but in her low 40s, she like grabbed my hand and showed me around right away, the shortcut to the field. So you build this bond with the family that really kind of sees you in this very transitional part of your life, right? I was 20 years old, 19, 20, and they see you trying to figure it out, and maybe you get drafted, and you're trying to learn how to work and sort of do the job, that just in case you don't make it, you have something to fall back on. There was so much in your life going on, and that family became that anchor. And to this day, they're still like family to me.
That's really incredible. So take us back a little bit further to your time at Penn. Obviously, one of the top prospects in the nation at that point, and that's why you get the opportunity to play in the Cape Cod League. Tell me, how did you get the opportunity to come to Wareham specifically?
Well, in the Cape in general, I was fortunate because University of Pennsylvania, although not known to be this baseball powerhouse, even though they've gotten there the last couple of years to the tournament, wasn't going to be really the hat. You couldn't really hang your hat on that and say, hey, Penn has all these players, so come and we'll just recruit your whole team. I knew that there's extra marketing, I guess, so to speak, that had to happen. Now, the fortune that I had is there was a bunch of Penn players that came before me in the Cape, and they showcased how good Penn can be and how good the Ivy League can be by just doing a great job. Jason Jonas, Joe Delicari, a lot of guys played in the Cape before me, so they laid the groundwork as Ivy Leaguers or Penn guys that could do well. So I think that opened the door. Now, from what I understand, is that year before I played in the Cape, one of the coaches at Bourne, a couple players, the coaches saw me play in like a Florida tournament or a tournament starting the season off at Penn. And so my name kind of got on the list. I played at Notre Dame and Baseball City or whatever, all these places. So I think that sort of got the buzz going. And eventually they started to recruit me when the time came. And I was mostly looking at Bourne. I think there was maybe one other, maybe Katuitt or Brewster, maybe. And the other was Wareham. And I was very determined to have a job that I could build on in my engineering degree, to be like, no, I want a job. I appreciate there's many jobs. You could be a grocer and they're all great, but I wanted a job that really advanced some of the things I was doing in my engineering. So I ended up uh, that ended up being the separator from Wareham from Bourne. And Bourne, 3 of my teammates went to Bourne. So it made sense for me to go there, but I was the rebel and I went to Wareham because I thought the job was better. So I ended up working with the economic development office at Wareham at town hall, and I learned about regression analysis and like mortgage lending. I mean, it was great. And so it was a good gig. And that was really how I ended up at Wareham.
That's really interesting. You don't hear that very often, the fact that there was a job lined up at the team that you're going to play with that was ultimately the deciding factor. Especially, I don't know what the schedule looked like for you back then, but I've even had conversations this year with players. We are sharing a host house with one right now, a right-handed pitcher out of Arizona. His name's Tony Pluta, and he was talking to me about how he wished he had time for a job. So what did that schedule look like? Were you working kind of a 9 to 5 and then 5 o'clock rolls around and you walked over to Spillane?
Well, admittedly, my hours got a little smaller as the season went on because I was so tired. But yeah, I'd get up and start off whatever 9 o'clock, and then I'd work as long as I could, two, and then whenever you had lunch, and then I'd just change and get ready for the game. Now those hours kind of shrunk a little bit, but I stayed going to work there. That was my day job, and eventually you start to get better at not only the work, but if there's anything you could do extra at home or just think about and come in more prepared. I did get better in that regard, even though the hours started to back off. Because yeah, sometimes you go on a road trip to Orleans or something. It's like, you don't have the same amount of time, right? So that was a factor that changed my work hours. But I became very close to the team at town hall. I remember we went for the first time. I learned this term like quo hogging or whatever it was. So I remember like, oh, this is cool. I go on his boat. I learned how to catch these like mini shells, clams, or whatever. So I picked up a lot. We became very close, and so it was very impactful when ultimately one of the leaders in the group passed away. So we stayed close for a lot of years. So but it was an important part of the experience because yeah, although I want to put all my eggs in this baseball basket, I also knew that chance it might not happen, and I wanted to have these other skills. And I thought Wareham did a great job as an organization to find me this gig.
That's awesome. Now, who were some of your teammates that you were a part of here at Wareham that were impactful to you and maybe made the major leagues as well?
Well, I know. Well, Mark Smith was one of the big leaguers that made it and played against him years later. I mean, he had a great year. He hit over 400 with a wood bat. It was ridiculous. He had a great season, and I kind of described Mark as super versatile. Like he was kind of good at everything, right? He could throw, he could run, and he wasn't like the mega star in any one particular facet, but he was super steady. Like just had beautiful hitting approach. So I learned a lot just watching his like preparation, hitting off the tee, keeping the front side closed. I was just more like free, raw in that sense. Like, okay, and learning how to like hone in on the drills and the preparation. And actually, a big thing is I started in center field and I got moved to left field, and Mark ended up taking center. And, that was something that was, somewhat of a shock, but also like, okay, trying to like, I'm still in the lineup kind of thing. So I ended up playing left field, and I had a good throwing arm, so I ended up learning how to use that. They moved me to right at different times. But in the end, it was most important I was in the lineup. And so I think the big thing for me was that big time programs, right? Oklahoma with our coaching, Cal, Berkeley, UNC, all these great schools, USC, and trying to figure out, well, do I fit in this, right? Coming from the Ivy League, you're always trying to see, well, where's the competition? And there's criticism that you didn't compete against like great programs, so you need to prove it here. On top of that, using a wood bat. But I had a big advantage because in the summers in New Jersey, I played in the Metropolitan League, the Met League, and I played with wood. My brother had me use wood in Little League. So I was really comfortable with that. And so I had a great season, just playing well. So I think there's a lot of guys, the barometers by which are all around me, not only my teammates, but the opponents, to be able to hit well against these top talent, Mike Kelly and all these great players. That really made a difference to say, hey, I belong here. I really belong here. And to get some really excellent coaching from a different perspective with that blank slate was also very important.
That's awesome. You still fond of any specific memories from your time in Wareham, playing wise?
Yeah, there was so many great memories. I remember the All-Star game at Orleans, and I remember one time. So we had a home run derby at the All-Star game, and Mike Matheny, the catcher, longtime catcher with the Cardinals, manager, and so on, wasn't known for his power really or his bat, but he was a guy that had really good Cape, and he was a wonderful receiver, and he proved that for decades. He ended up winning the home run derby, which was like, people were like, they had Lyle Mouton, Joe Vitiello, and Matheny wins the home run derby. So many years later, I'm working for ESPN, and I was doing Wednesday night baseball. So we're doing TV. And one of the things we used to have is we'd have a quick interview on the field with the manager before the game. And a couple times I would do it. So I was on the field, and Mike Matheny was managing the Cardinals. So I was like, oh, okay, Mike Matheny, I got to introduce Mike Matheny. So in a total curveball, I introduced him as, and we're standing here with the 1990 Cape Cod home run derby winner, Mike Matheny, and this face is like, and he said, and Rick Suckler says, I hadn't seen him smile in years. That was good. So I remember, the All-Star game. I had a great All-Star game, and I barely hit the ball to the infield, but I had like 5 hits or something. But we made it to the finals. We lost to Yarmouth Dennis, and my moment was, there's a guy in the league from Ohio State named Tim Smith, and this guy had what I call like a slurve slider. I had never seen anything like it before. So nobody could hit this dude. Like, he just threw it, he threw it, he threw it, he couldn't hit it. And it was a battle, just trying to hope he'd throw a fastball or something. So all year long, it was a nightmare facing this guy. But at the end of the year, it's kind of tired. His arm probably used him a lot. He had like 80 something innings, whatever. And we're in the finals with YD. And I think it's tied 1 game apiece. And it's like, we're down by 1, like 2 outs in the top of the 9th or something. And I only had like 1 or 2 home runs during the season. And Smith comes in, and I'm like, oh, this is a nightmare. But he didn't quite have the sharpness. And he threw a fastball, and I hit it home run to center field in the trees somewhere. And it was just like, so I had this moment of like, I tied the game. It was right out of the movies, right? You tie the game, top of the 9th inning, but we ended up losing, unfortunately, in extra inning. So we were close. We had a really good team. A lot of great memories with the family I stayed with making, pancakes for the girls in the morning, the 2 daughters. So there's just so many memories, and they're ongoing because I still am very close to the family. I went to the youngest daughter's wedding not too long ago in Savannah.
Wow, that is so cool to hear. So, when it comes to the lessons and the experiences that you've talked about, what has really stuck with you the most? Well, specifically, as you made your transition from Wareham to professional baseball, and then something that maybe stayed with you throughout your career from your time here.
Well, it was a big thing and a milestone for me to get the sense of belonging, right? And the kind of erases that doubt that can creep in any performer player about like, oh, well, do I fit here? Do I belong here? I think just fitting in, not only, performing well, but then the team, coming together. The guys later, Chris Klipinski, played against him later in the Marlins. There was just guys, Brad Woodall. There was just guys that you saw, whether in the minors, many of those guys got signed at some point. So I thought that was really important. I think there was a lot of what it took to be the best. Really, it wasn't like you just show up. You had to have a plan. You had to prepare. I learned a lot from just watching guys in these top flight programs, added things to my game. I think handling the pressure, I was a projected 1st round pick coming out of there, right? So all of a sudden, I won the best pro prospect award. And the crazy thing is we had like my roommate in college won the best pitching award. It was unbelievable. So my roommate at Penn, we won the top 2 awards and Mark, I think, won MVP. So it was crazy. And I think the pressure of, oh, now you're a top prospect, everybody's watching you, phone calls, all those things, agents, that was really tough to learn how to navigate that. And I had a nice head start by being around players that have been really used to being top prospects their whole lives. So those were big, but also the mystique, the beauty of Cape Cod is really understated, right? There's something highly majestic about playing in the Cape. It just has that aura about it. The fog rolls in, it's poetic. The fans are incredible. The loyalty, the coming out, they just love that baseball, and you really do fall in love with the brand of baseball. You just feel like you're playing in history, and I just think that is something that just has been. I've been to a few games since, like within the last 10 years, feels the same way. Just the kids running around down the line. So it's like when I was growing up, I was looked up to my brother who played at the Teaneck Lancers. That was our town summer league, and I was like, the Lancers, oh my gosh, that's what it felt like. You were like kind of rock stars in this very local sensibility. that really stays with me. I just think there's so much nostalgia that I gained in terms of what to value about what I love about the game by playing in the Cape.
You talk about that fog and the mystique. We just had our first visit to Chatham. So that was like the most charming baseball experience I've had as a 21-year-old now. And then he talked too about, what Wareham and then on kind of injected into you in terms of routine, reliability. You led the majors in at-bats in 98. You led the National League in hits in 99. Where did that MO of reliability start? Did the Cape help that, or was it from beforehand?
Yeah, I was second in NL in hits behind Luis Gonzalez, which was tough. I got hurt the last like 10 games and I missed a bunch. I was like, oh, so close. So that was a big thing. But yeah, reliability was a really important to me because I think I was the guy that was the kind of skinny kid growing up chasing his older brother. And they're like, oh, you're not that tough, and they kind of toughened me up, so to speak. So it was really important as the skinny kid getting drafted that I would be the guy out there every day. I want to play every day. When I got drafted, I actually did get hurt in the Penn League, and that really bothered me. So when I reported to A-ball, I played 120 straight games. I was like, you're not going to say anything. It's like, and a bat was swinging me at the end. I didn't care. I was like, you put me in the lineup, I'm going to be out there. So for many years, I had 600, 700 sometimes plate appearances as the starting, center fielder for the Phillies. That was big. And I think the Cape was another example of being available, right? What it takes to be available, not be in the training room. I know sometimes you have to be, but I thought that was a goal of mine to be out there every day and take care of your body. And so that was huge. And speaking of Chatham, by the way, Chatham is the movie about Cape Cod summer catch that I think he made it with the Chatham A's. I think that's where he played. So Freddie Prinze Jr., of course, I got to meet my silver screen debut, that movie. But once again, capturing the incredible, beauty of the Cape. I think there should be more movies, shows, something about it because it's really special.
I think we should have a reality TV show just focused on Wareham. We should probably cook that one up, I think.
Yeah, man, it'd be cool. And then, all the diners. I learned cheesecake. Fell in love with cheesecake in Wareham. I was like, wow, this deli has some amazing. So yeah, just random stuff like that. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
That's incredible. So it's difficult to find older stats from the Cape League, but we were able to dig up yours. In
Yeah.
44 games, you hit 331, you drove in 20 runs, and you hit one home run.
Oh,
I'm
one.
asking
Okay.
you now, do you remember that home run?
Yeah, I do actually. Okay. So it was this tall right-hander in, I don't know what field, but I remember it was kind of in the middle of, there's like trees out there, left center. I think I hit a home run on the road. And gosh, what was it? Bennett? Was his name Bennett? There's a picture. Why is it Bennett? Real big. It's a big, tall right-hander. And yeah, I don't remember what field. Or give me some names. Or Chatham, Katuitt,
Orleans,
or
Whitey,
no, it wasn't Orleans. It wasn't with the.
Brewster.
It wasn't the picket fence one. That Brewster, right? Or that back in the day, they had like the. Yeah, actually, some of these might have been upgraded at this point. It wasn't YD. It
Hyannis,
wasn't Born. It might have been no Hyannis. No, it feels like is there a team like Maroon or something like that?
Thomas,
What is it? Falmouth? Maybe,
Thomas.
maybe. So that's all I could think of. But
Okay,
right-hander hit a home run.
okay.
What do you got?
We weren't able to figure out. We don't actually know. We thought maybe you'd be able to clue us
I'm
in.
gonna I'm gonna look it up. Well, I got to look up if I have the rosters, I have a good shot of figuring it
Okay,
out. So I'm
gotcha.
throwing Bennett. I'm gonna throw that name is sticking with me, so I'm gonna go with that one.
That's all the context clues we can get. But we had that conversation yesterday too about the different ballparks and stuff like that because in recent memory, the Gatemen specifically have some good memories at Chatham since we were there yesterday. So, any favorite ballparks that you visited while you were in the Cape?
Yeah, of course, you gotta love Spillane Field with like the all dirt infield or whatever he had going there, the darkened dirt.
Good choice.
Yeah. So let me see. Well, I didn't like Bourne because one time I slid for a ball. I was doing that cool move where the ball's up against the fence and you slide around it and then pop up and throw. And then I slid and went through the fence. So my leg got caught in the fence. and I couldn't do it. I had to roll the ball to the right fielder, and I couldn't get out. So they stopped the game. Umpires actually had to peel me out of the fence. They had to pull the fence. so,
Oh my God.
so that wasn't a good memory. So the fog always rolled in there. Yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to think. I could like visualize the parks, but I'm not sure I can tell you which is which at this point. But I do remember like, I remember picket fences. They all just had a nostalgia, a mystique to all of them. They kind of, Hyannis was like the city, that was a city life. So you had to, step up your game. Guys wanted to go out and hang out in Hyannis. So that was always fun. Orleans, had a real nice ballpark. And I remember Mike Kelly, the legendary Arizona State outfielder, played for them. So that was a big deal to try, because that was the guy I was like most compared to, like top center fielders, right? And he was always like a notch above because he was a power hitter. But yeah, so they all had their own flavor with the fans, and that's what I loved about it.
What about once you got to your time with the Phillies? Did you have a preference later on with regard to Veterans Stadium or Citizens Bank Park? Did you have a favorite place to play at there?
Like, it's hard to beat the vet because I grew up a Phillies fan, and I just was in the footsteps of all my favorite players, Mike Schmidt, Gary Maddox. So that will always hold a certain place in my heart about being the special place. But Citizens Bank Park is so nice. I mean, so well designed. As an engineer, I love that stuff. The fact that you walk the whole ballpark in a circle, and see everything. They're all good views. And that was, I was part of the first, and my last season was the first year at Citizens Bank. Wrigley, cannot beat Wrigley. Just that takes you the Cape Cod flavor, classic neighborhood. The brick, the ivy. That's just impossible to beat. That feeling of being in a neighborhood. But I played some. A lot of these ballparks are amazing. I mean, major league ballparks generally are outstanding. Coors Field, Arizona Diamondbacks ballpark, Chase Bank One. They change it, every year. All these parks just bring good memories. And then, of course, it's the places that you hit. If you hit there, you love it. Shea Stadium, I love you. I love you out there. So I don't complain if you hit there and you see the ball like a grapefruit. Gotta love that ballpark.
Awesome. Is the Coors effect real?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And what's understated about it, it's not even just like hitting home runs. That's like the bonus. It's the fact that you could fit Fenway Park into their field. The gaps are just humongous. So you hit a ball in the gap, it's triple, double, triple easily. And the grass is like this thin. So anything on the ground flies through the infield. So ground balls go through, gaps are humongous. And if you get in the air, it's gone. So that is a beautiful park. I mean, I had a home run to dead center field in the trees. That's all you need to know. Because the guy who hit one home run in the Cape, that is not supposed to happen. But that happened in Coors Field.
That's a shot. That's a shot right there.
Yeah, no, it was a good moment. It was I hit home runs off of both Bobby Joneses. So that will go down in history. Lefty Bobby Jones and righty Bobby Jones. And that was one of them.
That's awesome. So you see it time and time again with players, their careers wrap up and they make the transition to the journalistic side, broadcasting and writing. I'm curious what that was like from your perspective, making that transition and becoming more of a storyteller and a commentator on the game.
Yeah, it was great. And I think I always had a wonderful relationship with the media as a player. Loved to talk to the media, enjoyed listening and learning. Jason Stark, I was a huge fan of his as a kid in college. So that was easy to feel like I could be part of the club. I would love writing. And really that was kind of my breakthrough moment because I was very involved in the Players Association as a player. And when the Mitchell report broke about steroids in baseball, PEDs, I had kind of a front row seat to the policies and the teams and the players. So I ended up writing about it, and it did really well. And it just kind of kept going back to that feeling, which I really underestimated about how reciprocal writing was, how therapeutic it was. So that was kind of my breakthrough moment. And so as a result, I started to get opportunities of writing more, and I started doing more and more radio to follow up on the columns that I wrote, MLB Network, all these different things. And then soon it sort of got the attention of ESPN. And for a year, I didn't really try to interview with them. I was really happy writing. And then they kind of said, hey, why don't you come out and interview? So they did. And after 2 months later, they offered me a job. And that's now 15 years ago. So really love it because I'm still around the game. I get to talk the game. I have a podcast with Jason. I teach at UConn in the off season on sport and society. So I get to kind of show how baseball or sport not only has the fun that we love about the games, but also that they impact larger society and in many ways can be positive. So I try to celebrate that as well.
Yeah, you talked about being friendly with the media. You've also made a comparison and mentioned Summer Catch. So sticking with the cinema theme, I found an article where you compared choosing not to do steroids akin to the blue and red pill dilemma from The Matrix. So are you a Matrix fan? Do you like movies? Are you a cinema buff at all?
Oh, I love movies. I read. I'm a voracious reader, but I love movies. And I have 4 kids, so I'm always like we went Inside Out too, incredible. Inside Out series, phenomenal. And so yeah, I'm very much into the movies. Bull Durham is my favorite baseball movie. It should be Summer Catch since I was in it, but you know what? I'm going to not be biased here. Bull Durham, and my wife is an ice skater, was an ice skater, so that's perfect because in Bull Durham, if you remember the scene where Crash Davis says, "I can get you a rain out," and he goes and like runs the sprinklers. Well, before they do that, the guys say, "Hey, we need a day off," and this bus pulls up with a bunch of ice skaters, and they were like, "Oh, a bunch of skaters," and I'm like, well, "I am already the ice skater," so. I feel like I just, my art imitates life, life imitates art. So yeah, big movie buff. Love. I mean, I try to see what I can, and certainly I've seen my share of baseball movies for sure.
Now I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you had to rank your top like 3 or 5 baseball movies of all time, could you do that?
I don't know if I could. I mean, there's a lot of great ones, which is why that's what makes it hard. You know what? Here's the sleeper one, Mr. Baseball.
Yeah.
Tom Selleck
Yep.
goes to Japan. He's like the hanging on. I love that movie. That was so funny, so good. So that was a great one. Another real sleeper that I called the Little League World Series for the older group, the 13, 14. So that would be in Michigan. And I think it's Taylor, Michigan. They turned me on to a movie called Perfect Game, and I knew nothing about this movie. And it's about the Mexican Little League team. It was the first like international entry from Mexico that got to play, and they like ran the table. It's fantastic. It's so good. So I'm like, oh wow. So but yeah, I mean, there's a long list. You could throw somebody. I try to rank it that way. I don't know if I can rank them though, but yeah, it might be tough. But Bull Durham sits alone. It sits alone. Love it. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
played in the Carolina League. I played in that league,
yeah.
so all the better. And the Bull is not where it was located because they didn't want to give away free steaks every day. The Bull was like on top of a building in right center field. Like
Okay.
you needed a rocket launcher to hit it. But that's okay. That's you have to create the theater. But
Right.
so I quote Bull Durham quite a bit. Yes.
Well, you talk about art imitating life, life imitating art. I think it was really poetic and really important to baseball that the Rick Wood game happened this year. What were your thoughts on it? Was it cool to see that happen?
Beyond cool. And the weekend or two before, a couple weekends before, I played in the East West Classic remake at the Hall of Fame, and I was already in the spirit. They opened a new exhibit, Souls of the Game, talk about Black baseball and Black history influencing the game. So that was big to see that and the players come together, and then Rick Wood just sort of cherry on top to say the least. Just the power of really bringing in not only these numbers but the stories of real perseverance, American perseverance and ingenuity, and knowing that you're dealt this terrible hand of like the bias of segregation, the pain of segregation, and how it played out, and then a group of people built their own. They said, "All right, well, we can't play with you, so here we go." And from this, you get Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and all these incredible players, just out of the love of the game and the support that they found. So I think it was a high time that baseball not only had the honor of bringing these stories in, but also bringing the numbers with it. And I think that was really important. It just strengthens baseball because you see the game widen its arms to bring in more of what this game has meant and to our culture, our society, and really in an international level as well. Because a lot of the Black players who were from Cuba or other countries, they couldn't play MLB either. So they play in the Negro leagues. So I love the story. And I think Rickwood, kind of talk about the oldest stadium and all the stories and the people that flowed through there. They, whether they were megastars like Willie Mays or not, they all shaped the fabric and kind of wove their stitching into it, so to speak. It's very important for us to tell those stories. So that was a beautiful thing to watch, and I think very powerful.
Absolutely, especially, in the light of Willie Mays' recent passing. Now, you mentioned that you teach at UConn a sports and society class, and that ties in perfectly with what we were just talking about. So I'd like to know, what is the most rewarding thing about teaching for you?
Wow. I mean, well, my dad taught originally in Trinidad. He was from Trinidad and Tobago, and eventually became a medical doctor, psychiatrist when he came to the US when he was 31, and had a long career there. My mom was a teacher, math teacher throughout her whole life. So that was a big influence on the power of education and learning how to teach. So it felt very natural and I kind of created this class out of kind of thin air, just all the things I was passionate about on how sports informs larger society. So I think from there, I pitched this idea to a lot of people. And first, my alma mater at Penn said, go run with it. So I did, and I brought it to Yale, and then I ultimately brought it to UConn. And I think the reward is these incredible minds of people who are 18 to 22, my TAs included, or maybe a little older, who are seeing how baseball, sports, our culture has really been influenced by sport. I mean, sport is incredibly powerful. And you look back to so much social change, whether you mentioned Rickwood, but there's so many examples. The American Disabilities Act, you talk about, golfers sort of push that forward, right? You think of, Martin, for example, many of these incredible people that took the courage to leverage their platform to say, I want sport to be for everyone. And by the way, when we do that, we can actually expand from there so that everything should be for everyone. This country should share jobs, housing, and safety, whatever it is. And I think sport is such an anchor to this concept of team, right? Unifying wherever you're coming from, we come together with this goal. But it's also something that exists at its best because it has rules that we appreciate and follow and we have nostalgia about and we uphold. And when we uphold them fairly for everyone, that's also a very good lesson for our larger society, our community. So I lean into sport being this great example. So when I see students be moved by that, changed by that, be passionate about it, their ability to recognize that where it fits in their life through law, through politics, through media, however way you create change, then I find that it's so rewarding to see these students come in and then come out. And by the way, it's really reciprocal. I get so much feedback from them, like, oh, I didn't think about that. They're just brilliant. So that is incredibly rewarding as well, because they always help shape the class and make it better. And one real cool thing that's rewarding is I've run into students now at like MLB, head of MLB strategy for the Mets, former student works in facilities at the Cubs, former student, UConn. I mean, it's amazing. And they're all over the place now, because this would be my eighth year. So they're now the 22-year-olds I taught back in whatever year, they're 30, they're married, they're starting to, couple, guys are all over the place. I had a student in the NBA for a while. So I can't, there's just a laundry list of how powerful it is to be in a classroom with the future. I just can't get it. It's a powerful thing, hard to get enough of it.
And how do we, as young adults in baseball right now, continue that cycle of weaponizing baseball as a forefront of cultural change, social change?
Well, I think Rickwood is a good example. I think you have some blueprints more and more about how you open those arms and embrace more to set that example. First you have to push back when anyone's talking about sticking to sports, right? You just have to push back on that, because nothing about our history says that was productive in many ways. Because if you go back to, where did the idea of campaigns and races come from when you're running for office? They came because the original not stick to sports was how we ran elections in the late 1800s, 1890s. your viability as a candidate was connected to your athleticism. I'm not saying that should be the standard today, but it gives a window as like, that actually historically was how it was. Sport was woven in as part of your candidacy. So it's not something unusual to talk about sport in a way that we can inform larger society. That's actually our history. And the only reason we got away from it back then is when other people who were kind of othered were going to be part of the political process. When people were newly to the country, slaves were free. Once they started to become part of the political process, then the stick to sports boo bird started to step in. So it was more to keep the power residing within small groups of people. That was the original kind of stick to sports. But when you have certain experiences like the Negro Leagues, and you have a moment and you have a platform like Jackie Robinson to be able to, well, wait, I can actually do something here. And that is maybe it's your only avenue. Maybe you don't have a degree in this and have all these other places. So that's your space. You might have a chance to use it. And not everybody, marched down the street. Willie Mays was not someone who said, oh, I'm going to go to sit-ins. He said, I'm going to speak with my bat. If you want to believe in equality, then one way I can do that is by showing you we're equals on the field. Like, that was his approach, and that's his strength. Others might, kneel. So other people might protest. Other people, there's a lot of ways, but I think sport opens up that avenue because, when I played this game, I walk into spring training every year and there's people from all over the world with all different political affiliations, backgrounds, and we had to figure out how to be teammates and win together. We had to figure that out. And that was very good for everybody to learn how to navigate that in a way that says, oh, this is, in the end, you had different relationships by the end of the season. Like, oh, I understand more about that. I assume this about this person. I no longer do, whatever it is. So I do think that those are opportunities. And I think you can lean into it as a tool for to teaching and learning education. And it doesn't, and I think you could do it in a way that's not like ostracizing people or saying you're bad because you voted this way. I think you could do it in a very inclusive way. And so far, the evidence for me is it rings true because of my experience, whether in the classroom or bringing up issues through sport that have really led to some change.
Well, I might be a student at the University of Florida, but I'm really considering enrolling at UConn just so I can take your class. Listening to you talk about it, it really fires me up, and that's something that I'd love to be a part of if I could be. So I guess for one final question for you, to kind of tie a bow on all of this, you talk about the ability to make impactful change. What do you think your place is in all of this? You don't have the label of just being a baseball player or a former baseball player. You have the ability to be so much more. So what is that from your perspective?
Well, I think a lot of it is being able to lean into the things that I've always believed true, is that the chance of what sport can provide. Baseball obviously is my central passion, but I love to write about it and contextualize it. I love to use the opportunities to have sport bring us together around these. And these are challenging issues. I'm not saying it's always easy, but I do challenge Major League Baseball out of love for the game, because I always call them out on things like, hey, we can push this, we can be better here. And I think I have a good rapport with Commissioner Manfred and many others, Billy Bean in the office, because we have a lot of honest conversations. But one example is when things went down with George Floyd, and there was a lot of discussions about change. Baseball was discussing it, and I wrote an article about 5 things baseball can do to kind of address racism and the systemic issues and things like that. And one of the things I wrote about was to engage law enforcement. And it was a positive discussion, because I grew up in a town where my summer league team, I mentioned with my brother being the Idol, the Teaneck Lancers, our coaches, our lead coach, our head coach was a volunteer police officer. And 5 or 6 of my teammates went into law enforcement, and many others before that, over the years. And I kind of learned in these moments, like, okay, here's an example where law enforcement and the community was very much on the same page about discussions and things like working together. They had a very horrific incident in the 90s. Today would have been pandemonium, because of the police department in this situation of shooting a teenager, and it was white and black, and they have never fired a service weapon since that date. That's 35 years ago. It became a policy. How did they do that? They figured out how to de-escalate. They figured out all these things to work. They coach. One of the coaches, the police officer, is going to be the coach of the high school. They said they use sport to actually create the harmony, which created the bandwidth to give people a second chance to say, wait a minute, like what else are we doing? Now, sure, there's still a lot of pain from that incident, and it doesn't just go away, but how they leverage sport was definitely a positive example of what is possible. And like I said, they have not fired a weapon as a police force in 35 years. I mean, that's incredible. And so I think that, there are examples. So can you lean into sport more to use it as a teaching tool, and it just expose people? Sometimes that's just it, expose people to each other with goals that are harmonious, right? And these are challenges because, we have a lot of division or segregation in our country. These are challenges, but I see it as a way forward. So what do? I try to teach in these classes and learn also from the students. I try to write as much as I can. I try to advocate, for change. And I try to do it with as much information that might, not just what I want, but also be informed. So, and if I have the platform and the ability to do so, whether being at ESPN and others, I feel very fortunate that I can. And, and I have a great partner in, my wife, the legal background. I mentioned the ice game, but she actually went into law. She's an attorney by trade. And, we bounce a lot of things off of approaching a lot of these challenges. So, and being a parent, it's a big thing, trying to leave a better world. So final point I'll make on this is I was a systems engineer, and the systems methodology that we learned in college was 3 states. And one of the states was as it is. And that is how is the world right now? This is how it is. And you measure it, you consider the state it's in, and you look at it for what it is. From there, you consider as an engineer, you say, well, where is this going if we don't change anything, right? If everything's just the same, and that is called the as it will be state. That's where it goes. Now, what did a systems engineer do? Well, you tried to take that state of where it's going without change and figure out the changes to make to bring it to as it should be. And your goal in the design was to create that ideal place that you're trying to go. Your goals, what are you trying to achieve? And I think the sports fits very well in that, because you can use sport to bend that curve, right? To some place that brings everybody in this space, that brings us together with information, with patience, with one sensibility around it. So I always try to work in that space. Where are we trying to go? And what can I do to be part of that?
Wow, that is really incredible, and we appreciate your perspective and your thoughts on these incredible topics, and just being able to reminisce with us. We appreciate your time. Kyle, did you have anything else?
No, thank you very much. We appreciate you, and I think it's worth noting too that I'm a diehard Philly, so go Phils.
Yes, and I like the hat, guard the gate.
Oh
So
yeah.
I got to finish with Go Gatemen. Okay, let's bring the title back. All right, let's do it.
Guard the gate. That's right. Well, hopefully you can come to Spillane Field soon. When was the last time you were even here?
A few years ago, not long. Yeah, I forgot where I went to a game. Oh, I went to a game at YD. So that was once. I've been to a couple games in the last 7-8 years. It's been a minute though. And I always think of John Harrison Wild. Always thinking of John Wild. He was our announcer. And we used to say, splendid, John Harrison Wild. So we miss him dearly. He was just a beautiful person.
Yeah, yeah, we never got to meet him, but incredible. Well, hopefully if you come to Spillane soon, we can have you on the broadcast. That would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And special shout out to the Donahue family for many years.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Doug Glanville, it has been an absolutely incredible honor to have you on Wareham Whiparound today. We appreciate your time, and we'll be seeing you soon, hopefully.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. You can catch every episode of Wareham Whiparound on Apple and Spotify, as well as the Wareham Gatemen YouTube channel. And be sure to watch the live for free broadcasts of all Wareham Gatemen ball games this summer on the Gatemen YouTube channel, as well as Cape League TV. We thank our guest, Doug Glanville, once again. Eibe and Kyle Marchak signing off. We will see you all very soon. Have a great one.